Okay? So what do we want to do? We want to get to the cause. Why did the check engine light come on? What's wrong with the engine? Why do we have high blood pressure? Why is it when the doctor pumps up the cuff, he tells me it reads too high? Why? Anybody answer it? Inflammation. What we just talked about. So high blood pressure is a warning sign. The cause is the inflammation. So what we need to know so that we can prevent heart problems is what causes inflammation. How do we avoid that? If we can avoid that, we avoid heart disease. There's 4 causes of inflammation we're going to talk about. Sugar. Surprise, surprise, right? That one comes up in every single talk that I do. And side note here, some of the things we're going to talk about tonight, we're not going to go into great depth or detail. We're only going to skim the surface. But that's why it's so important that you make it to all of these talks, or if you can't make it, you watch it online. We put them on our website, insightshealthassociates.com. It's on our card. Go and watch it if you can't be here, because each one of these builds off of each other. They're all linked, okay? Some things I'll talk about tonight might not make sense if you weren't at the last talk where I spent an hour talking about a particular food or diet that you should be using or utilizing. So they're all connected, all right? And if certain things that I talk about tonight don't make sense because you haven't been to all of them or you missed something and something didn't make sense, talk to me afterwards. I'll try to give you the scoop the best I can, at least the short version of it. So, sugar, improper ratio of essential fatty acids, should be somewhere in the range of 1 to 1 to 4 to 1. We'll get into that a little bit more in a second. Acidity and free radicals. It's on the cover of Time magazine, February 2004 issue. Inflammation made the cover. The silent secret killer. Inflammation, it said. Inflammation, it says, leading cause of not only heart disease, but cancer, diabetes, obesity. One more I thought that I wanted to mention. Can't remember it. But it's the underlying cause of many problems in the country.
And they say salt.
Salt plays a role too. Yeah, we'll get to that. We'll get to salt in a second. Yeah. So let's talk about sugar. What is it about sugar that causes inflammation? And so when we say sugar, again, we talked extensively about sugar last time, right? Extensively about sugar. And it's not just sugar, it's also grains, because grains turn to sugar. So when I talk about this, I'm talking about, yeah, your sugary foods that you know, but I'm also talking about your breads, your pastas, your cereals, all those things. Those are grains. Okay?
So they actually ferment?
Well, let's talk about what's going on. Yeah, they do ferment.
Okay.
There's a range, or there's a spectrum here of good and bad. So if you currently have heart disease, you know, you've been to your doctor, they told you have heart disease or whatever, you need to avoid these altogether. Okay? You need to avoid them altogether to totally decrease inflammation, wipe it out. If that's not you though, let's say you're healthy, you don't have any heart problems, but you just want to prevent and maintain good health, there's a spectrum here. You always want to avoid sugar, but when you start getting up into the whole grains, they're not nearly as bad as the sugar. The whole grains are way better than the sugar is, okay? So whole grain compared to sugar is healthy. But still, if we want to wipe out inflammation altogether, we still don't want to be consuming the whole grain. Yeah. So there is a spectrum of health here, but if we're going to talk about being totally anti-inflammatory, we're going to talk about no grains. No grains.
And the bread with more grains is considered healthy.
By some.
Well, it's right on the package.
Yeah, well, marketing is very tricky.
That's meat again.
Yeah, right, exactly. So what is it about sugar? You know, I tell you every time that sugar is so bad for you. What is it about sugar that causes inflammation? Well, when you eat sugar or you eat carbohydrates which turn into sugar in your blood, it increases your blood sugar. So in your blood you have more sugar. What is it in your body that reduces sugar? It's insulin. Yeah. Insulin is a hormone that's created by your pancreas. When you eat a sugary food or grains, when the blood sugar goes up, your insulin goes up with it. Your pancreas senses it, shoots out insulin so that it decreases your blood sugar. Okay, so when you eat sugar, you're going to increase insulin. When you eat grains, you're going to increase insulin. Why is insulin bad when it comes to inflammation? Because it causes it. It contributes to it. Right here, insulin contributes to the following. It increases enzyme. You don't care what the enzyme's called, but the enzyme increases inflammation, which you do care about, or you should. It causes 90% of all disease, especially heart disease. 90% of all disease links back to inflammation. High insulin levels cause inflammation. High insulin levels come from eating sugar and grains. That's why we want to cut out the sugar and the grains, so that we decrease insulin, so that we decrease inflammation. Let's move on. So again, like we talked an hour about sugar last time, and tonight we spent 5 minutes on it, right? So you don't know as much about sugar as you should if you weren't here last time, but we do the best that we can. So essential fatty acids, that's the second reason. We talked about what causes inflammation. Remember, that's the topic. Sugar, and everything that turns into sugar. Second is, actually I shouldn't put essential fatty acids. It's improper essential fatty acid ratio, because essential fatty acids are very important. They don't cause inflammation. So that's a little misleading. I should rewrite that. But it's the improper ratio of essential fatty acids. So, research has extensively shown that omega-3 fatty acid, which is found in things like fish oil and flaxseed oil, is extremely good at decreasing inflammation and reducing heart disease and risk of heart disease. Okay? So omega-3 fatty acid, extremely important for reducing inflammation and reducing the risk of heart disease. But when it comes to essential fatty acids, your body is supposed to have a balanced ratio of omega-6s to omega-3s. And omega-6s, a lot of them are pro-inflammatory, meaning they cause inflammation. Now, they don't all cause inflammation, okay? I'm not going to get real in depth with that because I don't want to confuse you. But omega-3 fatty acids, all good. Omega-6s, some bad, some good. But the important thing is that you're getting them in the right ratio. That's more important than anything. Okay? Because, is all inflammation bad? No. Remember, it's a natural, normal response to an injury for a short amount of time. So, we don't want to eliminate all omega-6s that promote inflammation. Some people, they hear about omega-3s, and what happens is they go way overboard in the other direction. They supplement all these omega-3s, and now they've thrown the ratio the other way, where they have so many omega-3s, they've decreased their immune system so much that their body can't fight things off the way that it should, because that's what your immune system does. So you don't want too many omega-3s either. Don't get me wrong. Again, it goes back to the proper ratio. What is the proper ratio? Omega-6s to omega-3s, it should be somewhere between 1 to 1. That ratio would mean they're equal amounts. All the way up to 4 to 1, being 4 times more omega-6s than omega-3s. You might say, well, why would that be? Why more pro-inflammatory than anti-inflammatory? I don't know, but that's what the research has shown. That's the proper ratio. Should be in the body from 1 to 1 to 4 to 1. What's the typical American? 50 to 1. 50 to 1. Way too many omega-6s to omega-3s, meaning that we're extremely pro-inflammatory. Inflammation all day long leads to heart disease. Why are we so skewed the wrong way? Well, it goes back to what we eat. We eat a lot of meat in this country, and meat has omega-6 fatty acids, pro-inflammatory. So when you eat a lot of meat, you're consuming a lot of omega-6 fatty acids, which leads to inflammation. We don't eat a whole lot of fish, nuts, and seeds, which are the things that we find to be high in omega-3 fatty acids. So it all goes back to our diet. So remember, Typical American is at 50 to 1. Should be at 4 to 1 or 1 to 1, somewhere in that range. Okay? So the proper ratio is important. 2 to 1 is kind of the average, so that's what I use, and some of the stuff I write down. A 2 to 1, it's just right in the middle. See if there's anything else I want to cover here. No, we got it.
So Cheerios won't help you decrease the heart attack?
No.
That's a grain.
That's a grain. Yep, yep. And this is a side note, which I don't want to get on a tangent because I want to stay on time to finish up here. But the only reason that Cheerios can put that on there along with some other things is because of the fiber content. So because it consumes a little bit of fiber, along with any other food that has a little bit of fiber in it, they can say, you know, according to studies, it's been shown that diets high in fiber may reduce the risk of of heart disease. Right. Which is true. But you know, fiber is good. Fiber is a great thing. But what's coming along with the fiber that you're consuming?
90%.
Yeah, right. So, like I said, fish or the omega-3s, good food sources. Fish, nuts, seeds, those are all great sources. Supplementing omega fatty acids is a good idea. We carry a perfect ratio omega because it comes in that perfect ratio. We go a 2 to 1 omega-6 to omega-3. The thing that's nice about these is that you know you're never going to send yourself out of balance with too many omega-3s if you're taking a supplement with the perfect ratio. Does that make sense? Sometimes if all you do is take omega-3s, you end up skewing it the wrong way. If you get too many omega-3s, remember I said it decreases your immune system too much.
Yeah, but if we're that far out of whack, wouldn't you have to take like a whole crap load of that stuff?
Yes, but some people do. Yeah, you're right, Steve. But some people do. So it sometimes it can get a little bit tricky. I mean, what you can do is you can monitor to some degree how much omega-6 you're taking in. You could get a chart. I could give you a chart that shows you how much omega-6 you get in certain foods. And you could monitor that and say, well, each day this is about how much omega-6 I'm eating. So if I want to supplement an omega-3, I just make sure that I'm in the proper ratio. You know, somewhere 1 to 1 to 4 to 1. And you'll be fine. But most people don't do that. They'll just take gobs of omega-3s, and sometimes they'll also change their diet at the same time. So now you're changing your diet to be in a better ratio, plus you're supplementing a ton of omega-3s so you can shift it out of balance. But that's not the problem most people have. Most people are extremely deficient in omega-3s, high in omega-6s, so most people are perfectly safe taking omega-3 at least for a while. And especially if you're not really changing your diet, then, you know, continuing to take omega-3s only is probably pretty safe. But it's different for everybody because it depends on what you're eating. So we carry both. I mean, there's some people I will give just omega-3s to. You know, Steve knows that. We've worked with that before. Based on your condition, you know, if I feel like you have inflammation going on in the body, if we need to reduce that down. A lot of times we'll say a higher dose of omegas, you know, go 3 or 4 grams of the omega-3s if you have inflammation currently in the body. But then you can bring that down to a lower dose if you're just taking it for maintenance and health, which is less likely to skew your ratio. So it's individual for everybody. Let's talk about healthy fats versus damaged fats here real quick. So the healthy fats, olive oil, fish oil, coconut oil or coconut milk, nuts, almonds, cashews, saturated fat found in organic grass-fed meats. Now I just spent the last 5-10 minutes saying that meat was bad because it had all this pro-inflammatory fat in it, but that's only because most of the commercial grain in this country is fed, most of the commercial beef in this country, or animals, any animal products, is fed what? Grain, right? Grains. A lot of corn. Corn is a grain. When the animals are fed all of those grains, it skews their fatty acid ratios, and then when we eat that, our fatty acid ratios are skewed. So meat is perfectly fine. I'm a proponent. I support meat. It has a lot of healthy properties if you're eating organic grass-fed meat, because that's a normal diet for a cow to be grazing on grass. Healthy meat.